Insulin pumps versus syringes and vials. Which one will be better for you? If it's your first time on the channel, I help diabetics to build muscle, burn fat, and get healthy overall. But hey, if you're not a diabetic, but you also like supplement reviews, I also do amazing supplement reviews to help you to take your health to the next level, but also to build muscle, to burn body fat. You also get a sneak peek into my lifestyle, baby. So if any of that sounds good, smash that subscribe button down below, hit that like button. You guys know what it is. The insulin pump will give you a continuous delivery of insulin over time, whereas long-acting insulin is going to give you the long-acting insulin throughout the day to keep your blood sugar stable. It doesn't have a peak in terms of how intense the insulin is, whereas with rapid-acting insulin, like on an insulin pump, you're going to have a peak as to how potent that insulin is after a certain period of time. And typically, it's at its max capacity of potency when it comes to about an hour and a half after injecting that insulin for the most part when it comes to Novolog, Humalog. Long-acting insulin should give you a steady stream or intensity of insulin throughout the 24-hour duration, depending on what you're on. When I say 24 hours, I'm more referring to Lantus. That's the one I'm on, but obviously there's different durations of how long the insulin's in you, depending on what long-acting insulin you're on. There's one issue that might happen with an insulin pump, and that's weight gain. And what we see is there's actually studies out there that show people that transfer from going on needles and syringes to going on insulin pumps start to gain more weight, even if we account for things like calories, maintenance calories that they should be taking in. Now, a lot of times that could be because of the reason I just spoke about earlier, that when you're on a needle, you're on long-acting insulin, gives you a steady intensity of that long-acting insulin, whereas we have a peak time of how active rapid-acting insulin is, which is used in insulin pumps. From this, we could probably say that rapid-acting insulin has more of an impact anabolically speaking in terms of the nutrients that gets absorbed. The main purpose of rapid-acting insulin to shuttle glucose into your body's cells, but also once that glucose is in the cells, is convert that to fat. So now you have more of a potential over time to store more body fat because you have more of an anabolic insulin that you're using throughout the day. Someone could also argue that maybe people that gain weight on insulin pumps, it's likely because they're consuming more food because they feel more comfortable on the insulin pump, or they're having a little bit more low, so they're overcorrecting. But the other issue too is that by having a steady stream of insulin, like what we're doing to the insulin pump, it's mimicking what the pancreas does naturally, but it's not completely identical. It's not an identical twin.
My name is Julius, and I'm your twin brother.
And so you've got something now that you're using that, of course, has its benefits of helping blood sugar, but it's not 100% identical to what the body naturally does. And so what you might find is that there's these other side effects that pop up, which is maybe a little added weight gain. Also, we have to look at things in terms of your blood sugar. If the blood sugar's all over the place, making those corrections over time, continually with the more anabolic rapid-acting insulin that's in the insulin pump, could also lead to not being in that fasted window where your body is more likely to burn more fat because you're constantly chasing the correction. So that's why I always say to control the blood sugars as best you can, because that will help you to burn more body fat down the road, because you can maximize things like your fat burning window where you're not consuming food and you're not continually injecting. Now, somebody who's on an insulin pump, because they are on that anabolic insulin, may find it harder to burn body fat even if they're in that fasted state, because you're still getting that anabolic surge of the rapid-acting insulin every hour based on your basal ratio that could contribute to gaining a little bit more weight. Other things that you can do as well, like improving insulin sensitivity to make your cells more responsive to insulin as well, lowering your basal ratio overall, because what we're finding is people that are on an insulin pump, if you can lower your basal ratio to less than 37% of your total daily insulin, meaning the remainder is coming from your boluses that you give yourself, that can also help to reduce the weight that's caused by being on the insulin pump. And consuming the right foods, exercise consistently, that can help to mitigate that as well, but it does change from person to person. So we see the weight gain can be an issue with the insulin pump, where it's not as much of an issue when it comes to using long-acting insulin. Now, the other thing I want to say is when you're on an insulin pump, I hate having something that's attached to my body that I have to drag around me all the time like I'm Inspector Gadget. Not my vibe. I like to feel free. I like to move around.
I can't even feel my arms.
I know that when I was younger and I was on an insulin pump, it was one of those things where I felt trapped in a way. So aesthetically, I just don't like the look. If I'm going out and I wanna wear something and the insulin pump is popping out, I'm going to the beach, it's uncomfortable. It looks fucked up. I don't like it. But hey, if it works for you, it works for you. Now, the one thing about an insulin pump though is you can set different ratios, whereas it's harder to do that with long-acting insulin. Let's say the dawn phenomenon effect that happens between about 2 a.m. in the morning and about 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. in the morning, which is the natural circadian rhythm of cortisol, which tends to be higher in the morning hours, which releases more stored glucose into your body's blood. This can cause your blood sugar to go higher in the morning. Now, somebody that's on an insulin pump can set a specific basal ratio to navigate and account for that. So they can increase the insulin slightly during that time frame to help keep the blood sugar more stable. Whereas somebody that's on long-acting insulin, it's a little bit more challenging if you're on a 24-hour, for example, to be able to specifically set something for that time, since it's a consistent hit of that insulin throughout the 24 hours. Now, one strategy to overcome that as well is you could go for 2 insulins. So you can split that up into 2 doses, maybe one in the morning, one in the night. There are certain long-acting insulins that should be able to do that for you as well. Just speak to your doctor and see if you can get yourself on that, because then that would allow you to set a different ratio. But overall, you could really manipulate your basal ratio based on certain times of the day. Maybe you're more active in the evening and it's causing your blood sugar to go low. So now on the insulin pump, maybe between the hours of 6 p.m. and 10 p.m., if you have an active job during that time, you could decrease the basal ratio, or how much insulin you're giving yourself, to help to account for the increased activity. Also, you can get more fine-tuned with your numbers. So for example, if you want to give yourself 6.3 units of Humalog, you could do that with the insulin pump as well. Or another thing with an insulin pump, it can feed data back to the insulin pump to help you to control your blood sugars as well, by giving maybe a little bit of corrections in terms of what you're doing, and suggest insulin that you should give yourself based on where your blood sugar is. So overall, there's some positives, there's some negatives to both. Now, both therapies can work. It just depends on what works best for you. If you guys have any questions, drop them down below. Got you guys back. I appreciate you guys for being here. If you stuck around this long to the end of it, you're a real one. I appreciate y'all. I'll go ahead and I'll see you guys in the next episode.